We are back with another intraday. Well, I guess it's not intraday. It's an aftermarket 4 p.m. close edition of the TA report. Hi, it's Bags and GP's here, and I think Nick is here, but he's having a little difficulty, so he'll pop back on in just a moment. But hey, how are you, GP?
Good. Just watching, it feels like watching paint dry quite often.
Yeah, it's
This
been a little
one.
bit of maybe a boring market, would you say?
Yeah, I personally would like to see it. It's an interesting market for me. It's like chip names finally pull back and then everything else pulls back with it. Chip names go higher, and that's just not just chip names, but winners, let's say winners, right? Winners pull back and all the kind of laggards and sideways and losers continue to kind of just flail around. And then when the winners start to participate to the upside, those names continue to flail around and they're not participating to the upside, but then they're participating to the downside, but nothing's actually breaking. So it's mind numbing a bit. You know what I mean?
Be a little frustrating, yeah. I mean, I haven't really been that active trading. I mean, we've talked about it, I don't know how many times in the past, just about, when you've bought at good points in the past, you're not eager to necessarily move out of them. And you're right, nothing's breaking. You have some volatile days like yesterday, but then what does the market do today? It just bounces right back, right? And kind of shows some resilience. So I mean, if you're one of the expert traders who gets every top and bottom, you're loving this price action. But for someone who is not constantly trading their account, yeah, it's a little bit of a snore. I mean, you don't ever like to see a day like yesterday where everything comes down so far. But at the same time, like look at Coinbase today, right? Like had a 5% down day, 10% up day. It's
Yeah.
hard to be too picky about it.
Yeah. What I at some point would like to see is consolidation in these broad-based winners for months on end, right? Like forget chips, look at Costco, right? That's just like it's just nonstop, right? So you would like to see these names find some consolidation and see rotation happening underneath, and yet you're just all you're seeing is winners continue to win with up and down days here in between, and then everything else just kind of stays
Well,
sideways.
unless you're Tesla or Apple, right? Those two have been in the doghouse for a minute.
Yeah, and just at the bottom of their ranges for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Like, and like it broke the lows. I'm not saying Tesla didn't, but it didn't close below the lows. So maybe it does tomorrow because there's obviously someone selling the crap out of this right now. Last 3 days, it's down. I think as of the lows was down like 13% in 3 days, right? It took 4 weeks to get to the gap fill and then destroyed to the bottom of the range in 3 days. But it still hasn't broken yet, so to speak. It can tomorrow. I'm not saying it won't, but it's it's not accelerating in the way that I would have expected on breaking those lows. I would have expected 175 to break and close below it today, right? And like I said, it could be tomorrow, could be Friday, as Fridays generally tend to be crap in Tesla. Um, but it didn't break. It tested, it bent, but did not crush it. So it's interesting to see. I think it's just more along the lines of what comes next, and it's harder. It's getting harder and harder to see what comes next. I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't try to prognosticate too far in the future. I mean, you have to some degree, right? But at the same time, it's ride the trend. The trend is your friend. If there's a setup there, it's not counter trend trading for me.
Yeah.
So I'm, as we've spoken about many times, I mean, I'm very happy with what AMD has done, right? So I'm not going to trade around AMD right now. Um, I'm not even going to sell, calls against my position. Same with Amazon. Amazon's at the top of its range, right? Nearing all-time highs.
Yep.
It won't take much for that to, fire up through 187. I'm not going to sell calls against that position, right? So for me, it's been kind of boring. I'm watching the charts, but at the same time, I'm just not doing a whole lot. And maybe that's complacency, and maybe I should do more. And I mean, I could even sell some positions down, I guess. But it's hard to make that call when you're not seeing things really slightly bend, but not over exaggeratingly bend, I guess it's not time to hit the eject button.
Yeah, and maybe this is the market giving you an opportunity to hit the eject button without too much damage
It
before
could be.
it legs down. Who knows that answer to this
Yeah.
conversation? Yeah, I think it's so like when I'm thinking about this stuff is like, okay, uh, we've been trying to adjust for the market since 2022, and so like the positions you've built over that time in these names is like, okay, well, what's the next leg here, right? Because things like Netflix are up 200%, 250% from the bottoms. And if you got anywhere close to it, it's like, what's the upside momentum here? And are there better trades? And sometimes there aren't. And you just stick with your winners and it's good, but also got to see what the tea leaves are to a point, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I'm trying to see where the next direction here is. And um it's getting harder for sure to find direction, and it's just kind of range bound for so many names.
So would you look at the current price action as mixed signals to you, or just indecisive?
Um, so like if I'm thinking about this pragmatically, it's the winners are winning because they're growing, they're showing free cash flow, they're showing all the things that the markets wanted to see, and everything that's lagging is lagging because they're not showing those things, right? So can they show those in the next few months, next couple quarters? Yes. So that's what I think is happening now is like people potentially rotating out of these growth names and starting to build positions for names that are going to participate on the next leg higher in the markets. And it could just be dispersion trade, right? Like
Hmm.
maybe they don't see like maybe they don't see the light and stuff like that. So I don't I always like to do my weekend stuff. So the midweek stuff is always kind of interesting because you have all this recent price action in your head and you haven't gone through all the charts that you normally go through. So it's hard to answer that question for me right now.
I don't disagree with that at all. Um, I saw you post about Dixie earlier today on X.
Yeah.
Um, Explain your post a little bit about what you're seeing in Dixie.
Well, so like we talked about parabolas, right? And parabolas kind of all forming and breaking in the same way. And so Dixie to me was not necessarily a parabola via price, but if you're looking at the chart, it was pretty much straight up. And rates were a parabola, so to speak. It went from 3.98 to what 50 in a year and change. So into a big supply zone. So like to me, it's this is all part of a bigger trade that I don't really understand all that much because the correlations are starting to break, right? Like it used to be that rates go up, market gets destroyed, and that has not been the case. It's just been kind of sideways. And so, but you're seeing the Dixie kind of break down this level that it's been holding here. You had an inside week last week, and now it's breaking lower. It's already taken out that prior week inside, prior to the inside week's lows here. Um, you're also seeing, yeah, it's trying to figure out what's going on, and part of it is like, okay, well, the dollar is weakening. Technically, dollar weakening is good for stocks, right?
Exactly.
So, dollar is weakening, but the stocks outside of the winners that we've been talking about are not participating. And so is it that they're building and they're building and they're waiting for the dollar to actually break down, to actually take the next leg higher? Are they waiting for FOMC? Are they waiting for next earnings? Are we going to be sideways until till the end of the year? It could be, right? We could consolidate via price in almost everything that's not part of the winners list. So
I mean,
yeah,
if this were an equities chart, the bears would be saying that's a head and shoulders, and it's going down.
yeah, but whoever's involved in the dollar trade here, right, is not a all of a sudden becomes a non-technical person and becomes a macro person and be like, well, the
Yeah,
dollar's going higher, right? And
right.
you're like, okay, well, you can flip the script all you want, but based on that chart, based on what's rolling over, and its inability to push higher out of this kind of range, is showing you that people are you see the MACD, the STO breaking down, like right, like
The
you're seeing
RSI has been
yeah.
making lower highs
Yeah.
since last year around this time.
So generally, this is something that's powerful for the equities rally, right, to continue higher,
One would think so.
right? But we don't know. The like I said, I started highlighting this about a month or 2 months ago, where it used to always be that rates went up, dollar went up, right? And then it started to break that rates were going up, dollar was going down, or vice versa, dollar going up, rates going down. So, yeah, it's been on my radar and watching how this correlation is starting to change. Like yesterday was a really interesting example. Technically, when equities get smoked, so do bonds, right? TLT. Yet TLT was going higher and markets were still going lower. And so just trying to figure it out, man. It's not like some predetermined game plan. If the price action says, hey, we need to adjust our viewpoints here, then I will. And so like
If
one
it
one
were
of
easy, it would be free money.
yeah, exactly. And so for me, I'm looking at regionals, right? Regionals look to me, regionals look like they if you look at the month, right, I shared this, it's and put it in the 9 month moving average. It's trapped between that green moving average of yours, whatever that is, the
21 and
21
9 is the blue.
and the nine, and you have it testing
Or
the
sorry, 20, 9 and 20, 9 and
yeah,
20.
9 and 20. So you have it rejecting the 20, but the declining 20, but holding and wicking off the monthly nine. And if you change this from KRE to the Qs, it's almost similar to what it was doing in September, October, right? Qs right into the nine, slightly like the 20 was turning up too. So it's a more bullish kind of setup, but it's similar to how this is looking. It's consolidating at this kind of pivot and holding where it needs to. So I will continue monitoring KRE because if KRE is going, then other banks will probably participate higher. And if those are participating, then you should see rotation towards small caps.
Do you think that's where money is largely going to be rotating into small caps?
Yeah, I think you'll
Sorry, I'm
need
kind of cutting in late here.
yeah,
Hi, Nick.
I think you'll need some macro events to potentially light that fire, and I'm not sure what that macro event is. I post all these things on X, Twitter, whatever it is, and then a lot of people's responses are macro, and I'm like, brother, I don't care about the macro. Like I don't know how to say it nicely. I'm paying attention to the price action, the macros, narratives constantly change and flip and whatever. So
Yeah.
I'm just focusing on the price action and I want to be nice about it, but I sometimes get into these conversations about the macro, and I'm like, no, no, no. What am I doing? I don't know. Like, I don't know enough about this space to be a voice, and so I try to turn it down. But sometimes the human part does come out, and you want to talk about it.
Sure, sure.
So
The macro bros have been getting smoked for a while now.
I just kind of think it's like big cap is taking a breather. And I think money's trying to figure out where it necessarily wants to go. It's kind of how I've been kind of looking at it. I try to steer clear. Like if the price action isn't confirming my bias in any name, I'm trying not to, like Tesla, for instance. I see that obviously like that's the biggest. It seems like a lot of people are frustrated with Tesla, and it's like, look at Tesla. Like I mean, what there's sure day trade it, but is there really or take a long-term position? But like the only reason the frustration seems to be arising, and at least the people that I follow, is just that they're continuing to focus on names that just aren't in favor right now.
yeah. So the growing concern in that conversation, right, Nick, and I think this exists for me, and it probably exists for a lot of people, is like the markets are stair stepping higher, but we all know that they need healthy consolidation, right? So
Yeah,
um if you're even of a long-term investor and you've been buying in the 160s or 180s or whatever in Tesla, you generally you don't want to have to buy there again.
right.
And that your position just kind of works. But if these names like Tesla, like Apple, like Google, like Roku, whatever names that you're in, aren't participating here when the markets are in kind of like a stair step higher, nosebleed, overbought, whatever terminology you want to use. What happens when when the markets actually get that
You're
healthy
correct.
consolidation? And
That's a good call.
so you're like, shit, like what am I doing? Like, should I be buying Tesla here or should I wait for the healthy consolidation to come in and let Tesla get beaten down to let's say it retest 100 again, right? And then wait for that. So I think people are trying to figure that out
That's a
um,
good call.
overall, and so that's the frustration. I'm sure there's some option players in there trying to time the bottom and getting frustrated with these moves, but I think from a long-term investor perspective is like, okay, well, it's not participating at all while the market just grinds higher. Dude, if we get a 10% correction, Tesla may get smoked. Tesla is one of those things that tends to act differently. But if it doesn't act differently and it is in this confirmed kind of downtrend, then where does it end, right?
Yeah.
Nick, where do you think the market's going? What do you think we're going to rotate into?
Um, I kind of think we're moving more, or we're trying to move towards like the IWM and more speculative stocks. I think it's just like the beginning stages of it, and it's almost kind of too early. Uh, if you, I mean, sure you could try and bottom tick, but I think that's kind of a fool's. I don't think that's the way to do it right
In
now. I think
IWM names or the IWM?
um I think IWM or mid cap. Um, I think all of the mag names and like larger cap stuff that has really led us over the like say the last year.
Right.
I think it's time for them to breathe. I do think like it's going to put pressure on the queue. Is kind of the yeah. I think it's kind of tough to say, but I think it's going to put pressure on the queues.
So, I mean,
The
we've talked
other
about IWM for the
the
past few
yeah
months, right? And like, I wouldn't exactly call it in itself bottom fishing, right? But at the same time, um, you're kind of at the pivot where you either want to see a break higher or
In the
see it come
IWM
down.
specifically?
What's that?
In the IWM specifically?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
some of the underlying names within it, yeah, you're probably right.
And so the question with the IWM is like each sector in the IWM, like the heavier weight ones, this is what I've been kind of trying to understand is the sectors one by one are starting to participate, right? Like XLF was the first one, and then KRE is coming in. You had XBI breakout, yet IWM is not, right? So what needs to happen? Do these sectors underneath need to take out all-time highs and run higher for IWM to push higher? Or and so like even in IWM, SMCI keeps pushing higher, yet IWM can't push higher. So what's what's like what's if the names that are participating that make up your sector are not getting it to break out, what's going to get this to break out?
Yeah.
Is the question I keep asking myself, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm like, cool, XBI. So XLF let us out, great. XBI is now picking it up while XLF kind of grinds a bit higher. And then look at the IWM charts, like, oh shit, it's still sideways. Like
Yeah.
top of the range sideways, but not actually busting a move higher. So what's the catalyst here that takes IWM to the next kind of stage, next leg, whatever it is? And I'm talking about the ETF, not necessarily the names underneath.
So we've gone through a lot of the different sectors, and we even mentioned the Qs as being the leader, which they have been, but we haven't talked about semis. And semis still, I mean, continues to be on a tear. And at some point the parabola is gonna fall off, right? But that's a that's been a pretty strong chart for a while now. And I don't know, when you have NVIDIA still doing what NVIDIA does, and AMD continuing doing what AMD has been doing. I think the Qs as a whole, minus the Teslas and the Apples, probably Google. Google's probably in that bunch of laggards. But there's a handful, and this comes back to the rotation that we've talked about just in the large cap names, the Magnificent Seven or whatever you want to call them, Fang or whatever else. You can have three, four of them sort of lagging or treading water as long as the others go up. And I have NVIDIA in that cohort, and as long as NVIDIA is going to do that, and semis are going to do that, the Qs shouldn't see too bad of a displacement as far as price action, and I would think. Um, you know, the complaint all of 2023 was it's only those seven names that are lifting the market, right?
Yeah.
And now we have all this other participation from all these other names, whether you want to throw in SMCI or whatever other name out there. You have a lot of names working underneath. So I don't know that the Qs, meaning the tech trade, is dead. I just think there's a basket full of mega cap that probably isn't the best performing right now or in the intermediate future. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and so like it's it's that when they underperform on the day, right, or whatever it is that you're not seeing the rotation that you kind of want to see broadly
Yeah.
is where I'm like Square, right? Post earnings has just been miserable. It's not even post earnings, top of the range, right? Shop top of the range, Amazon top of the range, just faffing around.
Yeah.
Meta kind of tries to push higher, comes back down, tries to push higher, comes back down. Um,
Netflix.
Netflix, right? Finally bust out and has basically shut the bed for 3 days now, right? On very little volume. And if you're looking at the volume profile on a week, there's nothing stopping this from moving higher, yet it continues to kind of languish, so to speak, right?
But you're in an inside week from a week that you had, what was last week? 6% in the name, right? Not an earnings week where you see these huge candles, but just a regular old week, 6%, and you're still on an inside week currently.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? It's breakout, no follow through, breakout, no follow through, breakout, no follow through, and that can be frustrating for people.
Yes.
And so Netflix is one of those names that generally when it moves, it doesn't move 4 to 6% in a week, right? It moves 15, 20% and then has consolidation or backfill and all that other stuff. But this is just kind of like it's not just Netflix, right? Like, but it's Shop too and XBI. There's so many different names, right? Like you can
Yeah.
um continue to go through the list, and then all you have to do is buy SMCI like yesterday, and you're good, right? Like it's just like
Well, it comes back to what I was asking earlier. Is it indecision or is it mixed signals? And I would sort of lean into it's mixed signals.
yeah, and that's what I think that's happening underneath is that people who are holding these positions are just selling calls against them while the markets consolidate or move sideways or whatever. They're like, this stuff is not going higher. Like we're already kind of in the need of consolidation. So I'm just gonna sell calls against it. If I get called away, I get called away. But it's a trade that's been going on that I've been watching since pretty much the beginning of the year, and they haven't lost yet. So
Which how far we've run, which how hard and far we've run since last year. I think it, I don't know. I think it kind of makes sense. And I think like, yeah, I think I would agree with both of you in terms of like, I think it's mixed signals. I think that it's going to be continue to be very stock specific, and that's probably kind of going back to my IWM point. I think it's just going to be, it's still early. Like it's still early, especially with the on the more speculative side, like the more like smaller cap names. That if I guess when I say early, I mean by like there's going to be very little forgiveness. If there's any misfooting, like it's going to be like, you know, one foot's out the door.
Yeah.
Is kind of how it, at least kind of how it feels to me.
We're
Where
happy to go higher, but if you screw up, we're taking a leg lower.
yeah, totally. Like you could, and then like looking at like, let's say I just kind of was skimming through like, you know, Apple, Amazon, etc. Like Apple, you know, back in 2022, we were largely talking about that 4-year moving average on the monthly, that's like the 48 month or the 4-year.
yeah,
It looks like to me like Apple could easily pull back if it like if the floor falls out right here, this 170 area, the width of that range, let's just say 170 to 190 or even 170 200, it's 30 points. That puts back Apple back at 140. That's a that 4-year MA tap. In the event that we hold there, I'd still look great and be putting in a higher low. Kind of same thing with Google. And how I think that how that would coincide with like the cues, if we did go into a more sideways-esque period like we saw June through, I don't know, let's just say like November or even like July through November, the cues could easily put in a range from 400 to now and just kind of move sideways. I don't know if that's what you're asking about in terms of like mixed signals. That's how I take it. And I'm like, okay, are we going to go into base building or are we going to continue? Are the indices going to continue to melt? Because the indices is continuing to melt higher and just kind of grind. Like right now, it's just basically the Qs are grinding along their 200-day, or I'm sorry, the 20-day. It's making it very hard for me to want to put any new capital to work. If anything, I'm starting to like kind of sell into some moves just because the setup's like really, there's not a lot of whole high reward, low risk setups where we're currently sitting. I don't think.
Well, where do we think the puck's going to go, so to speak?
I think all of it, I think it largely has to do with the SMH and when NVIDIA and SMCI finally decide to actually take a rest and put in whether we correct through time or price, we obviously don't know that yet. Like when I think correct through time, I'm thinking of like again June, July through October. If we saw another period like that, holy shit, we would have some gorgeous setups. If it's more of a correction through price, well, it could be a lot sharper. Like look how extended NVIDIA is from the 200-day. The 200-day is just now pushing through the high end of the base that NVIDIA put in kind of June, July through November-ish. I mean,
NVIDIA is 250 points higher than the 50-day.
yeah, like it's you'd be foolish to chase up here, but at the same time, it's still moving higher. So it might be easy to hold. Again, like personally, I find it difficult to add in or leg in at this point.
But if we get the see, this is where I'm struggling is if we get the July to September kind of down move in the markets like last year,
Yeah.
the amount of names that haven't really participated in this nosebleed grind higher, what what happens to those, right? Like what Apple gets to 140, okay, that's most likely going to be a place where people say, okay, enough of Apple, it's a good buy, I'm going to buy this here. Tesla gets to say 144, same thing, but like there's so many other names that haven't participated. What happens when like you my assumption is that when these breathe, those names start to go higher. But then days like yesterday, that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
um, if these names breathe, or if they get a heavy breathing session and they get plastered, right? Like if let's say if Nvidia drops right back down to the 50 SMA, which is 644, what happens to everything underneath, right? Like for Nvidia to get to 644, there's probably some news that comes out. So
Yeah. Nick, were you thinking something like this maybe for the SMH?
Am I thinking that's going to happen?
Yeah, you were saying if it
I think
did something like July to October, that would be ideal if it were time as opposed to price.
um I'm leaning more towards base building than I am correcting through like a hard price
Yeah.
type movement. I think that I don't know why I think this, but like I think SMCI, for instance, is heading to 1400. I think that's kind of where just symmetrically, that's where the measured move kind of completes out if you're measuring back from like the 300 breakout. I think some splits need to happen in the SMH names. And then I think we'll kind of I think we'll kind of see how it shakes out from there is kind of what I kind of think is coming.
Yeah, I think that's fair when you see something like this. Yeah, so splits is probably coming down the road at some point in the near future. I mean, it's still got earnings in 55 days, so um, we'll
and
see.
I mean, like
Nvidia,
I was gonna say
Nvidia
like
kind
the
of
cyber. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying Nvidia kind of reminds me of like the Tesla move. I know they've talked about it,
Yeah.
Simcorp talks about it, but Tesla moved out from that base, right, of whatever it was, and went from I don't know 26 or something like that all the way to 400. That was the problem. Yes, 400 came all the way back to 100, but it still never came back down to 26, right?
Yeah.
So there's a fundamental shift in NVIDIA, whether that shift lasts longer than a handful of quarters or maybe a year. There still the accumulation that's going on this upside move is that when it does finally decide to say enough is enough, correct, doesn't mean it's going back down to the very lows from where it started.
I totally agree with that.
And same thing with SMCI, right? I think it's similar to the amount of volume that's still being, like, if you go through and read 13Fs and stuff like that, they're still adding these things. And when most institutions, when they add, they're not adding for a day trade for a quarter, right? They're usually
Right.
adding for a longer time frame. So it's just something to keep in mind. But like, I think the question that weighs on my head quite often is, when do the other names start to participate?
Well, one name that we have spoke at length about, but at the same time, GP, you and I have said just let it break higher, is the GLD.
Yes.
Finally, it has released above 195.
Yep.
Is anybody buying the breakout here? Nick,
Yeah.
looking at you, Nick.
I threw a dart there. I threw a dart at silver too, actually. The SLV. I have no interest in any of the miners. I know that's a question that's come up. I don't
That
have a
was coming
desire.
next.
I just yeah, I threw a dart at both of them just because.
So the gold trade is an interesting one. So it literally, I haven't looked at or touched my chart since we've talked about it, since last year or the year before, whenever it was, right? And I drew a line at the time, and it's literally hitting that line, which
Right
was
now?
kind of, huh? Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, it's literally hitting that line this week, this month, whatever you want to call it, to like almost that point. And so my question is, does it actually break through by Friday, or does it end up rejecting?
Neither one would surprise me.
Yeah, like, if you draw the line
Push.
from the
Stays at the
March low.
line.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I'll try to share it on Twitter later, but yeah, it's I have no desire for this trade ever. So I
It
hope it
didn't
works
get
for
it didn't get you
whoever.
going yet, GP.
Uh,
I'm shocked.
nope. Yeah, I just own it physically, but don't really worry about the chart here. So
We are going to pick our shorts for the rest of the month, and not pick at our shorts, but we're picking shorts to cover our quarterly longs. We're not ready to do that quite yet. We'll take just a moment, because we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Bitcoin and crypto in general. But I hope you two have your shorts ready, because I have mine ready. So
Dude,
it's just a reminder to be like, hey guys, this is coming up. But Bitcoin reached a new all-time high yesterday, completely sold down during the session, during the 24-hour day. And now look at her. Popped right back above that 9 SMA. Weekly still looks very
Ethereum too.
strong. Yeah, ETH too. ETH made a big move. The alts are popping right now. The alts are popping right now. I didn't quite get 56, 57 on Bitcoin dominance. So we might be starting to turn. Look at all these alts that I've got over here on the screen. I don't know if you guys can see them, but you got some things flying right now. And Bitcoin shorts, huge down day, 56%. But yeah, guys, we talk a lot about risk on, risk off, and crypto sort of you know, I think it lulled people to sleep, especially Bitcoin during these consolidation periods. But we're right
Yeah.
back at all-time highs. And I don't know what the fear and greed index says, but to me, if I'm not saying that we're overly greedy and that the market can't go higher and crypto can't go higher. But normally, when you hit these points, right, when you achieve a new all-time high, you start to see sellers come in, and that might have been what yesterday was. But to bounce back so quickly today, to me, that represents a strong market.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and so the question is, why is Bitcoin, I mean, not just Bitcoin, but the crypto market so strong, right? Um, is it
Why?
a leading indicator? Like, why is this stuff behaving this
I kind of
way? While, well, and go back to the conversation we are having earlier, while so many things still refuse to participate, Bitcoin, all these things don't have earnings, they don't have anything. So why is this participating now, right? While the rest of the market is moving higher, but so many names still struggling. Should they stop reporting earnings? Is
in
that the
crypto,
best
or are you talking
in
about?
all these stocks that aren't participating?
Do you think that it's forecasting some civil unrest
No, I
coming
don't.
out of the, I don't know, the election at the end of the year?
That's past my macro bros
Sure,
knowledge.
sure.
Yeah, I'm with GP on that. I did pull up the fear and greed index. I just posted it. We're at 74. We're one tick away from extreme greed. Yesterday was also a 74, even with all that selling that happened yesterday. So that's a little weird. I thought a lot of people were clutching their pearls yesterday. At least that's what I saw across social media.
Yeah, I think I still keep looking at the the Nasdaq composite chart, right? The IXIC,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks like it's just starting,
I know.
right? And
Yeah.
kind of Q's had that move towards all-time highs and had a kind of a rejection candle and then just took off afterwards, right? So we're kind of having that rejection candle here this week, and it does it take off afterwards, right? Rejection candle while the MACD is still expanding here is interesting as well, right? That's it's a bullish, it's a pullback in a bullish sentiment. So technically it should resolve higher. So maybe we do start to see bigger participation after March at UpX and other names,
Mm-hmm. It's
right? And
interesting.
so like the one that's been catching my eye, I have no clue why, because it's such a terrible chart, is Cisco. Right? Forget like all the 1999 darlings all coming back to but Cisco is it's a 3 week tight. It's pushing up, already cleared the last 3 weeks. I mean, the last 2 weeks high. Um, and their earnings wasn't great, so someone's buying this. I'm not sure why they're buying it, but if you saw today, there was massive flow in the June 55s and June 57s, 5750s. So it's like, yeah, is that forecasting that other things are going to start to participate? And if you look at the Cisco monthly chart, it's a monster head and shoulders
Monster.
to me, but it could end up being a failed head and
Is that
shoulders.
is that your short, GP?
No, no, I'm actually long it.
Or
I'm
are you
long
still
it,
going with Boeing?
huh?
Or are you
Maybe gold now.
still gold now? You have about 5 more minutes to think about it. That's an interesting chart on Cisco. I just drew a couple quick little trend lines on there, and while it's below all the moving averages, um, I don't know that 9 and 20 could cross right here.
Yeah. I I personally, it's right now it's a short-term trade for me, but now I'm looking at potentially getting a bit longer, right? Especially with those June flow coming in today. I will see how it kind of behaves, because a lot of times this stuff may look like it's being bought, but it might be sold. But my initial was like, wow, that's 3 weeks closing at 48.44, then 48.86, and then 48.40 again. So it's a 3 week tight, which no matter the direction of the prior trend, it's a bullish setup. So I was like, okay, cool. And then it obviously responded bullishly because it's taken out the last 2 week highs already, and it's kind of stayed above it so far for the last 3 days. So it's just something to watch, right? Like this is how short-term trades could potentially become longer-term trades. Because if it is a failed head and shoulders on the monthly, the potential here is potentially huge. I don't know what's the catalyst that gets in there. Didn't they buy Splunk?
I don't know.
Was that? What was that?
I don't have the 411 on that one.
Yeah, I think they bought Splunk. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Chuck stopped taking my calls because he owes me $100.
Cisco Splunk deal set to win unconditional EU antitrust is the headline from yesterday.
Nice.
So if Splunk is the reason Cisco starts to break higher, it's something to keep an eye on because Cisco has a lot of cheapies if you're doing options trading.
And you know we do.
Yep.
All right, let's get into it. Our shorts. Nick,
Yeah.
you
I'm
are
gonna go.
leading.
Sure. Oh,
So that is your pick for the month is United Rentals. So since you are up so much, you get to make the first pick on your short.
I'm gonna go with lemonade.
Lemonade, that cool, refreshing drink.
Yeah.
What is lemonade's price point right now?
That's 16. It kind of feels and looks like it's hanging by a thread. I think it could be going after that gap fill at 11.
Gap fill 11. So let's note gap fill at 11, like your local news.
I mean, I think if we do start to see some real weakness in the overall market, I think
Yeah, if there's a weakness, this is going to go, right? Like
Yeah.
this is falling off. I mean,
Yeah,
it could go down to lows, right? Easy. I like it, Nick. I like it.
yeah.
You're going to win this quarter. I have faith in you.
Hey, thanks.
GP.
CVX.
CVX. Chevron.
Ooh, all right. Oh,
You got a price target on that?
It's about to break the bear flag after a very, very decently long sideways distribution. It's right at the bottom of the channel. It just pierced it today, so I'll see how it behaves this way. But if this breaks that 139 level, I think you have the potential
Yeah,
for
boy.
Huh?
Yeah, boy, I'm saying.
Yeah, I think if it breaks the 139 level, I think it destroys that 132 level.
Yep.
I like it.
I like it. I am going with a company. I actually like their products, but it's not about that. It's about making the most money. And I'm going with Yeti.
Interesting.
Damn. I like it too.
Yeah, I'm going with the Yeti. And I think it could come in back around this 30, low 30s. I'm going to say low 30s because it wouldn't surprise me if it got to like 33 or 30 even. So I'm just going to say low 30s.
Sure.
Yeah, it failed the moving averages last week and has shown no desire to move this week other than right back down that candle. So I like this one on a short. And just to be clear, these aren't like perpetual shorts we're calling. This is for like until March 31st. So we're not looking for these shorts to go to zero, just so we're clear. All right.
I like it.
Yeti 38.96. And then we'll see. Well, let's just do a recap. Uh Advanced Auto GP. Looking good, GP. This is where we were at.
Yeah, it's
5708
starting to
was the
get to
buy.
that. Just starting to get to that inverse head and shoulders kind of
Yep,
breakup.
yep. 5708 was the buy. So you're up a nice little percentage. Let's call it 25%. I mean, I would gladly take 25% every quarter.
On a bottom
Uh,
fish like that, that's pretty damn good.
yeah, pretty damn good.
Yeah.
URI and Nick threw his long on this at 505. And she is now up 33%, a little better than 33%. 700. You got that 700 for sure, Nick. So
Yep.
great job calling that one.
Thanks.
And then my Fresh Works, just pain. It didn't reach the $30. And 2053, I'm underwater now. What is that? 9%. So, barring a miraculous comeback from Freshworks, they don't have earnings coming up during this month. So, yeah, I'm going to chalk up the L, but hopefully this Yeti can get me going and I can win the overall. I've got to try to go back to back, right? I won last month's
Yeah.
contest. I got to try to go back to back. So anyway, we'll see. We'll see.
GPU Wayfair is really starting to shape up.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Wayfair. Thanks for that segue, Nick.
Yeah.
GP, your Wayfair.
Yes, honestly just I don't know what's the catalyst. I don't know what's gonna. It is just building and building, and I hope the release is as powerful as I think it's gonna be, and not some like I'm gonna get to 90 and then sell off for a month and a half or whatever. But I just it's the base that it's built over the last couple of years and where it's built it has all the kind of ingredients for me to be like, this is gonna just launch whenever that is. I have no clue when it's gonna be. We've talked about this between that 80 and 60 level for God knows how long. So quarterly it's there, monthly is there. You have multiple time frame alignments, and then we got the blessing from the monkey banana genius as well. So I just really like this. I think you just have to have patience.
Yeah.
Nice little tight wedge above the moving averages. It could pretty easily release here, and you're probably at least going to 90s, right? If
Yeah.
not 100.
So I'd be highly disappointed, I'll say, if after all of this release, it doesn't just fucking destroy 90, right? Like in my opinion, right? Like with this amount of accumulation here, I can't be I'd be like, wait, you only wanted a 50% gain, right? Like that'd be a surprise to me. So I it may consolidate in 90, right? It's the pivot, everything gets to the pivot high and consolidates, but I I think it goes much higher than that, personally.
Said he thinks it goes.
I think it's got room.
GP's talking like 300 coming soon.
No, I'm thinking 160 of 150. I think it's the weekly 200 week moving average or something like that.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I think
Writing it down.
it's like sitting at one, at least where on my chart, it's like 145.52, I think.
Yeah.
There's a big pocket right there.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because that was on the decline. And if we can get this to kind of push up higher here, it'll start to rise again, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you guys think? I have my bias,
I think it looks like a great setup.
Yeah, me too.
yeah. But it's not like, hey,
I,
it's gonna
I
happen.
think this is kind of one of those ones though, where we were talking like if the market does see weakness, I don't see this thing getting slammed and taking out lows. I can just see it continuing to chop around in this base building range. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
and this base can build for years, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you look at what's one of the ones that built for years and it finally released, I think a couple weeks ago, is NTNX,
Nutanix.
right? So this this has been building for so long, right? And it's fine. Like they're finally executing, so now they're being rewarded for their strategy shift and all that other stuff. So it could be years before Wayfair goes. I'm not saying that it's going next week, but I honestly just love there's so much support here for any downside movements that when it does break higher, it should be a pretty sustained movement, right? Like, for example, Rivian is one that didn't have the base and it just went bananas, right? It went from 14 to 30. And then what's it done since then? It didn't really had like a couple of, it didn't build any base and then
It's
it's come back to,
poo-poo.
yeah. So, um, you're looking at Wayfair, the base is there, the ingredients are there. You just need the match. You need to be able to light that fire to get it higher. What it is, when it is, no clue. But I think it's a long-term winner. And management is focused on making sure they get to profitability. If you look at, there's a stock called Dave.
There's a stock called Dave.
Yeah, DAVE. It's a
Huh.
small little fintech, right?
Huh.
And look at this move. They went profitable, right? That's what they just announced. That's that move yesterday. But leading up to it, all they were doing was building and buying, building and buying, building and buying. And then bam, they got rewarded for management focusing on profitability, on making sure that they're ready for this new monetary environment, right? So that's up what, 700% from the bottoms from that base. I'm not saying Wayfair does that, but this is when you're talking about management and executing, this is what you want to see, and this is how charts get rewarded. And now, if they had not come in profitable on their earnings, this stock would have been destroyed. It'd be down like 40-50%. Because all those people buying in anticipation for that profitability don't get it. They get frustrated. They sell down, aka Roku. Right? Roku's been promising profitability for 4 straight quarters now, and they continue to kick it down to the next quarter, and they're not doing it. That's with job cuts, with workforce reduction, all that stuff. So people are just like, you know what? There's better names out there. I'm out.
GP, I think you have another appointment to attend.
Yeah,
And
I'm not in a rush. I will get on there in a few.
all right, cool. All right, I didn't want to hold you. So if we need to break camp now, we totally can.
No, those guys are usually not on time. So
Not as prompt as we are here on our little podcast.
yes.
Hey, Randy, it's great to see you. Thanks for getting here. Thanks for setting up the card table and the box wine.
Yeah, not too many people on right today. What can
No,
I think people are exhausted and frustrated.
I say?
I hear that. Well, maybe it's a good time for us to break anyway, to give you some time, GP, and
I just meant, yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm getting on another spaces with Jim Rowe and Short Seller.
Oh, sweet.
If you guys wanna
Yeah, I'll
listen
tune in.
Yep. I think it's
give
today.
them my pleasant
I
regards.
think it's today. What's the handle? I'm trying to
Jim
search.
Rowe.
Yeah,
I love Jim Rowe. I think he's great. Oh yeah, it's right now. He's on.
he's on. What's it called?
Jim
Oh
Rowe.
yeah, there it is. Yeah, so I'll be getting on that in a few minutes if we're done here.
All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks for everybody who showed up. We appreciate everybody who clocked in and checked in and checked us out today. We'll try to be more deliberate with our times in the future. But sometimes life happens and we need to make a pivot, and we still wanted to have a podcast this week, so we're here. Hey, thanks, GP. Thanks, Nick. Always appreciate your insights. I feel like you guys drive me around a lot, and I'm doing my best to ask you questions and get some insight from you. But I appreciate all your knowledge and everything you guys share.
Yeah, love it.
Brother. Same brother. I find that I'm always learning, even on these podcasts, right? Week to week, and it's been going on for a couple of years now. Always learning new wrinkles. Listening to Nick is always fascinating to me because he's been doing this for a lot. No, but you've been doing it a long time. So
Sure.
we
I
tend to
appreciate
get
that.
into our own biases or narratives as well. So to hear other ones, it's always expands
Yeah.
our knowledge base. So it's awesome.
100%. All
Love
right.
you
Well,
guys.
I will see you guys Monday.
Yep.
We'll be back, same bat channel, same bat time, 8 p.m. Monday night. And hope you guys and everybody who's listening, and you two fellows, have a great rest of your week trading. And we'll see you then.
Yeah. You
Sounds
too.